FCT brief in Akwana, Abuja. Over to you.
In Akwanaria, good to hear from you this morning. Another beautiful morning here in the city of Abuja, and thank God it's Friday.
Indeed, thank God it's Friday, and as usual, time to plan to take your rest. Because it's about mental health.
Your favorite time of
yeah, you know, the weekend is not about partying. People should understand it. Also about you taking sufficient rest because of your mental health.
Are you sure about that?
Exactly.
Let's go into what we have for you today.
Yeah, good morning, Nigeria. Welcome to FCT Brief. Nigeria's democratic landscape enters a fresh phase as President Bola Ahmed Tinubu appoints Professor Joash Amupitan as the new chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC. The appointment comes at a time when the commission's credibility and institutional independence remain critical to sustaining public trust in the electoral process. Professor Amupitan, a respected legal scholar and former dean of law at the University of Jos, steps into the role with expectations running high. His academic depth, experience in legal reforms, and reputation for integrity position him as a strategic choice to steer INEC through a period marked by growing calls for electoral transparency and technological innovation in voting processes.
Beyond the symbolism of leadership change, this transition raises vital questions about continuity, reforms, and the consolidation of electoral gains achieved under his predecessor. Stakeholders will be watching closely to see how the new leadership addresses recurring challenges from logistics and voter education to result management and institutional accountability. As the new INEC chairman assumes office, attention now shifts to the Commission's next moves, rebuilding confidence, strengthening reforms, and preparing ahead of off-cycle and general elections. The coming months will be crucial in determining whether this appointment heralds a renewed era of credibility and inclusiveness in Nigeria's electoral governance. And to take this conversation further, let's bring in Cynthia Mbamalu. She is the Director of Programs, Yaga Africa. Thank you so much for joining us, Cynthia.
Thank you and good morning.
Good morning. Well, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has appointed Professor Joash Amupitan to replace Professor Mahmood Yakubu as the INEC chairman. Now, looking at his credentials, experience, and past engagements with governance, does he truly fit the profile of who should oversee Nigeria's electoral system at this very critical time?
Well, I think this is a question we can answer from the screening process, which is why for those of us in the civil society space, our demand is for a screening process that is quite thorough and in-depth, because we want the screening process that can reveal to us its level of knowledge and expertise in the election. So far, the profile shows a lot of experience in the legal profession. I do know that there's probably some experience in elections litigation, but we do know that the conduct of elections in Nigeria especially is quite complex and requires some levels of expertise and knowledge of the system that we operate in. And so we're expecting that the screening process is not just the usual take a bow. We're asking for a multi-stakeholder approach and a public participation in this screening process where citizens can send in memos, can send in feedbacks and comments on this particular nominee, and also during the screening that there's a participation of both media and civil society organizations as observers so that we follow through. In fact, one of the calls is that there's an opportunity for citizens to also contribute to the kinds of questions that would be asked this present nominee. That way, it will help us have, a better sense of his knowledge and expertise on elections in Nigeria, the current challenges, especially as it relates to electoral technology, ethics. Those are the kinds of questions we want to see to understand his understanding of these realities, and then also to ascertain his independence, because we need a new chair who is independent in such a way that, one, his commitment is to the Constitution and to the Nigerian people and to the Nigerian national interest, not to political interest and not to the interest of anyone or any party. And so those kinds of questions will help us understand where his commitment lies. And I think the third and the last part for us is these elections are already here. The new chair may have to oversee the Anambra, which is in November, so we already have an elections close to us, or the FCT elections in February. But most importantly, the general elections by February next year, the notice of elections will be published. So these individuals would have no time to really settle in. It's almost like you get into office and you get the ground rolling, which is why expertise is key. Because if you do not understand how to get the ground rolling, we would have to drag a lot, and our system cannot afford any further delays, because there are immediate issues that require immediate attention, especially as we start planning for the off-cycle elections next year and the general election. So for me, honestly, the screening process should be very thorough. It needs everyone's participation, and that's the call to the Senate, that with this nomination, there should be a public call for citizens to make their contributions through memos. There should be an email somewhere where we can submit our feedback, but that the screening should be public. It should be streamed live, but giving opportunities for citizens to also participate. That way we can ascertain his readiness and his readiness and capacity to actually get the work done.
Okay, you've rightly enumerated some expectations from the public, and that translates to one fact that Nigerians are expecting so much from this man, because after the 2023 election, there was kind of a drop in public confidence in INEC, and also we have increase in litigation in courts. Now, what kind of quality would you expect that this man will immediately put on the table to help restore the public confidence beyond the screening? He has a choice to either be a Maurice Iwu, like a Maurice Iwu, or Madam Ayoka, or Jega, or Mahmood. Now, what are those qualities you will expect that he begins to display to restore the confidence in INEC and in the process?
I do believe that the first is the communication, because one of the ways to rebuild trust is to provide timely and accurate information to the people. And I do believe that there's an opportunity to start that process of public engagement with stakeholders, with citizens. At least the first press conference that will be issued would provide details on the plan and agenda. The second is showing that level of integrity, unquestionable integrity and character, and independence. And honestly, independence for me is not abstract. Independence is ascertained through the conduct and the words that are spoken. And so one of the things we're expecting is that this individual in every conversation indicates and projects independence. Like I said, independence that shows that there is a firm grasp of the importance of this seat in determining Nigeria's democratic future, and there's a firm grasp in the importance of the Constitution as the primary authority in guiding the leadership of the chair of the Electoral Commission. The other part is being non-partisan in all forms. We do not want a chair that is willingly integrating or engaging with any political party, when it's not an inclusive process of all parties. We want a chairman that can inspire confidence in all the players, especially the different political parties in our system. And I think the last part is, one, a willingness to address the issues from the previous elections. From the by-elections, from the last general elections, there were major challenges that were observed from both the technology, the logistics, and the infractions of the INEC personnel themselves. We want a chair that is willing to take disciplinary actions against staff of the commission who are complicit or found wanting in either electoral fraud or manipulation, or even just mischief in the process. And so for me, there is important work to do to rebuild public trust. But engaging, you cannot shut that door to communication. Communication is key in rebuilding trust, but providing a clear agenda on what the plan is and a clear understanding on what the challenges are from the previous elections, from the previous leadership, and how to address those challenges moving ahead. There's a lot of work before whomever would occupy this seat. But honestly, it's an important role, and our elections, the fate of Nigeria's elections, it is really lying in this office, and the fate of the future of our democracy. And I think a lot of Nigerians want their trust and their confidence rebuilt in INEC and in the electoral process.
Indeed, Cynthia, you're right when you say that the new chairman has a lot of work right before him. And one of those will be the tough task of steering the implementation of the proposed electoral reforms once they are being passed by the National Assembly. Now, how do you expect him to navigate such a politically charged process without appearing partisan or constrained by executive influence?
Well, focusing on the issues. One way to ensure that you're not distracted and you're not disturbed by political interference to focus on the issues. The current electoral amendment bill, with the public hearing scheduled for next week, Monday, provides key provisions, and I do believe that a lot of citizens may also make their provisions. What is required for the chair is, one, to first take out time to study and understand the spirit behind each of these provisions, each of these proposed amendments, and if they scale through, to focus on implementation. How do you focus on implementation? One way is, one, the review of guidelines and policies of INEC to adapt to the new provision, especially for those that will require a new framework on the policy side. So that level of institutional policy review and conversation, especially integrating civil society who work in the space, that would be key. The other is also not to be distracted by several the politics that will be happening. And how do you remain focused by not being distracted? I think one way is that continuing that conversation with political parties. One thing the last year had done was to have that consultative meeting with stakeholders, including media, civil society, and political parties. I do believe that that practice needs to be continued so that all parties feel that they are being engaged and informed. And then addressing issues from the CVR. As issues emerge, one way to ensure that this person remains focused is to address those issues timelessly, but more importantly, focus on providing solutions to those issues. So it's not just making a statement on it, but providing steps on how these issues are being addressed. And then when there are grievances from political parties, there is an important need to focus on addressing the issues in line with the law and not from any point of sentiment. I do believe that when the focus is on the issues on our legal framework and addressing them squarely and timely, that it provides a sense of independence. Now, let's be clear, there's no way you have a system where people will not make accusations, because in politics, there is always that, mischief by political parties, a political class. I do hope that the new chair would actually be very wary of how political parties engage and there are several attractions that they make. Anyone that sits on that seat must be willing to be comfortable and content with what comes to that office by law, and say basically avoid any form of attractions from the political parties, because the offers will be there and they will be very juicy and spicy, because are very enticing, because they want to manipulate the process. So the ability to say no to those excesses and be content with what they have is one way to avoid skeletons in the cupboard. And I do believe that there is going to be a lot of enticement ahead of the next elections. So we want someone who is courageous to say no to political interference, someone who is bold to stand true to what the Constitution requires and what our legal framework requires for elections.
Quite interesting, the points you've raised there, but we'll continue the conversation right after this short break. Don't go anywhere. We still have more. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Progress no dey happen just like that. It dey come from support when you need am.
Mommy, I got the school fees. You too much.
Na money point o.
Money point, thank you.
Customer, na transfer abi? Confirm.
Bro, na transfer. Na money point oga. Oh, na confirm.
Progress na peace of mind when you know say payment go land as Sure Banker. Progress na small wind where they carry person go far.
No worry, yourself go make am. Mo go Bible.
Victor, even you they use money point?
Of course now, they use money point.
Confirm.
Money Point, made for your progress.
The Nigerian national flag represents our country's history, culture, and identity. It was designed in 1959. The colors are Emerald Green 2.0, which represents agriculture, and Immaculate White represents unity and peace. Know how to handle our flag. Illuminate the environment or don't fly the flag overnight. Do not fly a dirty or tattered flag. Take such flag to the nearest National Orientation Agency office for proper disposal and replacement. The national flag can only be flown at half-mast on the directive of the federal government. The national flag must be flown at the same or higher height when displayed alongside other flags. Don't burn or allow the national flag to fall on the ground. Do not print, decorate, modify, or insert the coat of arms on the flag. Our national heroes are not buried with the flag. They are honored by presenting it to their next of kin during interment. Respect our national flag. Be a real Nigerian.
This message was brought to you by the National Orientation Agency, NOA.
In the beating heart of Owerri, business never sleeps. From sunrise to sundown, the wheels keep turning. And behind the scenes, vision meets action. Governor Hope Uzodimma's leadership has turned manifestos into reality, transformations that feels like a miracle. But progress needs peace, and in Imo, it's not left to chance. From land to sky to river deep, guardians are watching, protecting dreams and opportunity. At Orashi's quiet shore, hydropower is rising, set to energize a growing economy. The change is visible. New roads emerge, industry hums, communities come alive. At the center, a digital revolution. 500,000 young minds trained each year to build the future. As Orashi rises, so does Imo and the hopes of a hard-working people. A new Imo is on the rise.
Thank you for staying with us. Now, INEC's transition is in full swing, and, with the nomination of a new chairman. And Cynthia Mbamalu is still here with us to, give us more on the expectations of Nigerians from this new appointment.
Yeah, Cynthia, after the 2023 election, one critical issue stood out. That was the controversy, the beavers and the IRF controversy. Now, do you see the chairman being able to restore the confidence in this process? Jega, for instance, gave us a card reader. Mahmoud came in and talked about beavers. Or are you expecting that he will come in with a new type of technology heading towards the 2027 general elections?
Well, I do believe that the beavers functions. What we need is to invest in ensuring optimal functionality. The truth is, it's not necessarily about the procurement of new technologies. It's can we get what we have to work well and fit for purpose? And I'm hoping that the new chair would consolidate on the successes from the last administration, because there were positive innovation and introductions in our process that were geared towards transparency. And so consolidating on improving on those would be important. For me, the first task is for the new chair to focus on, or whomever becomes the new chair, to focus on understanding the system, the electoral technologies as it were, and then working with the best IT minds, both within the institution and even reaching out to support from outside. That way, from expertise within the country, IT experts in this country. That way, we can perfect the INEC result viewing portal and the BVAS technology. In addition, part of the amendment procedure or proposal is to ensure mandatory electronic transmission of results. That way, it goes as a complementary part of the manual process, not a substitute. And with that proposal, hopefully that proposal goes through, because a lot of Nigerians are clamoring for that. Hopefully that proposal goes through and it can be part of our legal process. What I would expect from the new INEC chairperson would be to understand the process, to look at the challenges from the last elections, and then work with the team in addressing those challenges. And then, if possible, ensure that it is used for every election. It is used perfectly ahead of the next general elections, at least for the off-cycle elections next year. the Abuja area, the FCT area council elections, if we deploy them perfectly and we see them function optimally, it's one way to rebuild trust, because INEC would then shift that it's not necessarily about changing what exists, but improving on what exists, consolidating on the systems, and getting them to function optimally. Electoral technology is here to stay. INEC currently set up an AI department unit within the commission. It also means that artificial intelligence and elections are becoming part of our system. It also means that the new chair would also need that crash course on artificial intelligence to understand how AI-powered technologies enable electoral transparencies and how best leverage AI to provide security for the technology system, for the IT system of the Electoral Commission. Because in next elections, AI will be playing an important role, both as a positive and as a negative. So you also need that crash course on understanding the current realities in the tech space and how best to protect and secure the Electoral Commission from some of the threats that would be coming with the advancement of artificial intelligence in our electoral system.
Well, Cynthia, there has been some chatter online, and people are asking whether the INEC chairman always has to be a professor. Is there actually any legal or constitutional basis for this assumption, or this is just simply an unofficial tradition?
Is actually more of an unofficial practice, and I think it's a Nigerian thing. If you read it, people say a lot of Nigerians are among the most qualified set of humans. You finish with your degree, you want your master's, you want your PhD, you want to become a professor, because a lot of respect comes with that title. And so I do believe that the idea behind that is that people typically have respect for professors. Once you hear professor, there is some level of power that comes with that title. And so I do believe that that is one of the incentives behind getting a professor. Consistently, we've had professors. There's also that belief that those that come from the academia are supposedly individuals of unquestionable integrity and some level of moral height, moral standing in the community and wherever they operate in. Although we've also seen that assumption can be tested and it can be questioned. So for us, honestly, it's not necessarily about the title. In fact, in all of our advocacy, part of our advocacy was the need to consider people in their 40s, because the age requirement is 40 years old, because we also need some level of mental alertness from whoever holds that office. Someone who is able to withstand the pressure and can participate in several meetings and engage in every discussion that is necessary. And so there was a call on focusing on expertise beyond title. However, this is the nominee that we have, which is why, for me, we should not be swayed or carried away by the experiences, or rather by the title. That is important, but our focus should be around expertise in elections, understanding Nigeria's political context, understanding how our elections are done, and understanding the nitty-gritties between things like electoral technology, elections and AI, and managing the elections, the logistics, and citizens' participation in the process. So it's a practice. It's not written anywhere that this must be. The Constitution's requirement is simple: non-partisan, unquestionable integrity, and does not belong to a political party. That's what the Constitution requires when it comes to requirements. And then we are going for that to expand on what non-partisan means. It means you've never been a member of a political party. Unquestionable integrity means you've never been found wanting in any issue, even as simple as exam malpractice. We don't want to see those kinds of instances. You've never been found wanting in anything that has to deal around dishonesty, or anything that has to deal around abuse of rights, of violations of processes. For us, unquestionable integrity is broad. It's key. Independence is speaking or responding to an individual, but to the Nigerian people and to the national interest.
All right, Cynthia, how important and strategic is the issue of appropriate funding and timely release of funds to INEC, especially as we head towards the off-cycle elections and the general election? Talking about Senate quickly releasing what they would need. How strategic is that to the success of INEC?
Thank you for this question. It is at the center and the core of how elections are administered. If you think about previous elections where elections were postponed, a lot of that had to do with logistics and late release of funds, which is why the new Electoral Act 2022 had proposed for 360 days for notice. That way, the budget for the next elections is part of the budget for 2026. We want timely and sufficient release of these funds, or rather the adequate funds be released in a timely manner, because INEC needs the monies to continue or commence the planning for the elections. Procurement will be done. Issues around personnel will be addressed. Issues around contracts entered with third parties who support the elections would need to be concluded. All of this, you need monies to get it done, especially because elections are really expensive. And with the current challenges in our economy, INEC needs that planning so that there are opportunities to source the funds that will be needed. Because there are times where CBN will probably say, oh, we need the monies were not released because of we're trying to address certain things. There's some procurement that will be done most likely in foreign currency, especially some that may be done outside, although we're advocating that every work production-wise must be done internally. And we've seen that practice helping help manage some of the challenges we've seen in the elections. But the Senate, the National Assembly especially, when it comes to the budget for the Electoral Commission, one thing we're calling for is speedy approval. The other is that the timely release of adequate funds to the Electoral Commission to have its work done. If you remember this year, the delays in the conduct of by-elections, one of the challenges was funds, because there were no adequate funds. So we had a prolonged time of vacancies in the National Assembly and state assemblies. And ordinarily ought not to be so, because every Nigerian deserves representation in the National Assembly and the state assemblies. And so the delay in the conduct of by-elections were part of the major reasons was funding. And so for these next elections, there's a lot at stake. And any delay can impact on the quality of the elections, especially because elections logistics is massive. You're thinking about conducting elections for most likely 100 million citizens, because with the CVR, there's an expectation that our numbers will be getting close to 100 million registered voters across over 170,000 polling units in the country. Remembering that our country has peculiarities. One, there are more security challenges than we had previously, meaning that things around IDP voting framework by INEC will be looked into. So it comes at a cost. Secondly, they are hard to reach areas, which requires cost in reaching those areas in planning, providing an adequate support for the personnel that will be deployed there. And then the third part, voter education, which is key, because with a new electoral act, hopefully by next year, February, it means that you need to invest in voter education, voter engagement to promote understanding around these new introductions, or rather the new electoral act. And so money is key, funding is key, and I'm hoping that the rights power bearers are listening and that they take this very important, unless there's a plan to undermine the elections even before the elections are conducted. But I do believe that funding is at the heart of the work that needs to be done, and the Electoral Commission needs adequate resources to get its work done.
Indeed, Cynthia, we hope that these power bearers are listening. Well, that's where we'll leave our conversation this morning. It was quite an insightful chat with you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's where we'll leave our conversation this morning. Thank you for being a part of it. We will now hand you over to Lagos, where Ria Abdul and the rest of the team are standing by to continue with the rest of the show.
All right. Thank you so much, Abuja Nagode. That was such an insightful conversation. Thank you.